Mediocre Content. I am your host, Evolution, and this week we are going to be talking about 3D printing. 3D printing is super cool. You get to turn a 3D model into different files, and then you get to turn those files into an actual little thing that you can hold in your own hands, and it's rad. It's just super cool. Now, one of the things, there are a couple of steps for 3D printing. The first step is to find a file that you want to print. So this can just be like any 3D model that you want to print. There are a whole bunch of different resources that you can do. If you want to build your own, you can use something like Blender if you're more advanced, or Tinkercad if you're a beginner. Tinkercad is a website where you get to it's like a beginner's 3D modeling software, and it's super cool. Or you can use a library full of other people's 3D models, so something like Tinkercad or Yegi. I'll link those in the description as well. And you find a model that you want. So you can either make one or you can find one, and then the next step is exporting the file into what is called an STL file. Now this is just going to be a basic, this is going to be your model into a file. So on Thingiverse, it would be as simple as hitting download, or in Tinkercad, it would be just export into STL file, and it's super simple. Just save that somewhere, you'll be able to find it. Because the next step is going to be turning that STL file into something called a GCode file. So while a STL file is your model, the GCode file is the instructions to make that model. Kind of like how you have Lego's instructions, and you have the end result, which is on the box, and then that would be your STL, and then the little instruction booklet is going to be your GCode file, where it has step-by-step instructions. So it's just a GCode is just step-by-step instructions for your 3D printer. Now, in order to create this, you're going to need something called a 3D modeling slicer. I like to use one called Pura Slicer. It's open source, super easy to use, and you just download it, set it up really quickly. It's pretty intuitive. It walks you through everything you need to do whenever you first set it up, and pretty cool. Now, here is where you're going to be choosing what kind of printer you're going to be using. So if you have, there are two different types of printers. There is filament printers, where it uses plastic and it heats the plastic up, and then it cools the plastic as it goes around. Or you have resin printers, which are, it uses a UV resin, and it just layers it up slice by slice. So filament slicer goes on the top, resin slicer goes on the bottom, and that's important to know. You also need to know what kind of printer you're using, and the kind of filament. So I am using a Creately Ender 5 Pro, and I'm using PLA filament, and that's what I'm using. So I would put that into my Pura Slicer whenever it asks me for my specifics, and that will help the slicer create accurate instructions. Now what you want to do is you want to import the file, the STL file, then hit the slice, and then hit export G-code, and then it just brings you your instructions for the 3D printer. Super cool, super intuitive, just right off the bat. Next thing you want to do is you want to prep your 3D printer. This includes things like making sure that you have filament loaded, making sure that your nozzle is clear, making sure that you have leveled your bed. And leveling your bed, one of the most important things to do. If you do not have a level bed, you might not be able to have a level print, and it won't print right. So the way I like to level my bed is I like to do auto home. Well, first I like to make sure that I have my bed. The bed is just where you're going to be printing. I didn't say that before. The bed is where you're going to be printing. The bread is where you're printing. The bed is where you're printing.
Hello?
I was just thinking and then I wasn't. So make sure that your bed is level. The way you do this is you do auto home, which just kind of raises up the bed to where the nozzle is. And then you want to disable the XY steppers. That means that you are able to move the bed around, the nozzle around freely. And then you put it to the middle. Make sure that I like to put a piece of paper in between to just kind of as my leveling thing. Honestly, you can look up how to level yourself, but this is just a quick tutorial. Put a piece of paper in between the nozzle and the bed, and raise the bed using the knobs on the sides until you can just barely move the paper a little bit, but not too much. And that's how I level my bed. Then you gotta put the GCode file onto, usually you just need to put the GCode file onto the printer. Usually there is something like a microchip that you need to use, like a micro USB, no, like a micro SD that you can take out, put into a little, what's the word? Don't remember, but micro USB, no, a micro SD to USB. I promise I know words. And then move the file from your computer to the SD card. That's what it's called, an SD card. And then you can put it back into the computer, and then you can like choose print. And then our next step is printing, making sure that we can print. This is going to take a while, so like it could take anywhere from like 10 minutes to 24 hours, depending how big and how intricate your print is. And yeah, it's gonna take a while. But then after you're done printing, and it's really cool, you will have your very own little 3D model. It's awesome. The next thing you need to do is just take it off the bed. So that usually you have a bed that you can take off. And you can just lift it off, pull it apart, and take off whatever you've printed. And then you have your very own 3D printed thing. It's super cool. Here are some examples of things I have 3D printed. I'm just going to kind of put a couple of them on the screen. Bam, bam, bam. Wow. 3D printed is cool. I love 3D printing. It's super rad. But yeah, and I am going to link all the things that I learned how to... I'm going to link all the things that helped me to learn how to do 3D printing in the description below. And all the things that I've used to do 3D printing in the past. So if you're interested in doing 3D printing, that's the stuff for you. Yeah, and I hope you guys have a great day. Goodbye!